Hello. Today, we dive into a world where an angelic face hides the mind of a serial manipulator. Imagine this. You're a young college student, not a killer. Yet you're sentenced to 110 years in prison for a double murder. The prosecutor calls you the female Charles Manson because you never pulled the trigger, but you bought the shotgun. Years behind bars pass. Then, against all odds, this woman escapes. How? She seduces a correctional officer, makes him betray his oath, his family, and his freedom. We'll tell you how she did it, why she was caught, and what 5 years in total isolation did to her mind. This is the story of Chloe, a prisoner who proves that manipulation can be deadlier than any weapon. Stay with us as we explore how the system tries to break the most cunning criminal inside Rockville Correctional Facility. It all began in the year 2000, in a house that smelled of damp walls and buried secrets. It wasn't just a house. It was a halfway home for those already sliding down the wrong path. Our main character, we'll call her Chloe, was young, in college, and desperate for love. She found it in Richard Hull. The problem? Richard was a drug dealer. They didn't live alone. Another couple shared the place. Small-time dealers, just like them. Tension filled the air. Money, paranoia. Strangers coming and going. Later, Chloe would say she just wanted them gone. The prosecutor would say she wanted them dead. At some point, Richard, already a convicted felon, decided they needed a gun. He looked at Chloe, the only one with a clean record. "I need a shotgun," he said, "for protection." "But why?" "You're the only one who can buy it legally," he explained. "You don't want us to get into trouble, do you?" So Chloe went and bought it. A 12-gauge shotgun. Later, she swore that fear of losing him, fear of being alone, was stronger than her doubts. She thought it was for bird hunting. But it wasn't. One night, everything went wrong. Shouting, panic, then a blast. Richard Hull pulled the trigger. He shot their neighbor. Then he shot his girlfriend too. He later confessed that he killed the woman for one simple reason. She saw too much. And Chloe? She was there. She saw everything. Instead of going to the police, she made her choice. Together, they wrapped the bodies. Together, they dragged them to the car. And together, they dumped them in a dumpster as if throwing away garbage. When they were caught, Chloe's story fell apart. She claimed she was just a frightened girl, a pawn terrified of her violent boyfriend. But the prosecution had a different story. They saw not a victim, but a puppeteer. They presented Chloe as the female Charles Manson, a manipulator with an angel's face who made others do her dirty work. The trigger wasn't hers, said the prosecutor, but everything else was. And the jury believed them. The trial was a circus. On one side, Chloe, young and trembling. On the other, a prosecutor convinced he was staring at a monster wrapped in beauty. Her lawyer argued one thing: she was a victim. "She's innocent," he insisted. She was under Richard Hull's total control. She was codependent, terrified of his temper. When he fired the gun, she froze. Her part in disposing of the bodies came from fear, not malice. They painted her as a frightened girl forced to obey under threat of death. Fear, not evil, was her motive. But the prosecution was one step ahead. They knew jurors believe emotions more than facts. David Scott, the tall and sharp prosecutor, had a plan: destroy her image as a helpless girl. He focused on the shotgun. "Who in their right mind," he thundered, "buys a 12-gauge to hunt birds? That's not a hunting weapon. That's a killing weapon." He didn't argue about who held the gun. He argued about who pulled the strings. He portrayed Chloe as the perfect manipulator. "She didn't kill," he said. "She made someone else do it. She wanted the neighbors gone, for money, convenience, or just out of irritation. She used Richard's dependence on her. She was the mind behind the crime." The jury saw her not as scared, but as cold and calculating. They convicted her on 2 counts of murder and several related charges. The courtroom gasped. Judge Elizabeth Harper showed no mercy. Chloe stood pale but composed as the judge spoke. "Miss Chloe, for these crimes, for your cruelty and lack of remorse, the court sentences you to 110 years in prison." 110 years she would never leave alive. In a single moment, the college student became an inmate of Rockville Correctional Facility. Her world collapsed. All she could think was, "I didn't pull the trigger, but I still lost my life." That day, Chloe entered a world that saw her not only as a criminal, but as the most dangerous kind, a manipulator, and that label would haunt her for decades. To understand her new world, you need to know who else lives there. Prison isn't just a building. It's a collection of broken lives, and not everyone inside is a Charles Manson type. Meet Amanda. She's 34. Not a murderer, but a convicted robber. Her crimes? Street muggings in the back alleys of South Chicago, snatching purses, starting fights, surviving through rage. Her story began long before the crime. "I was a ticking time bomb," she says quietly. "Anger built up inside me. I didn't know how to release it. When I went out on the street, I saw targets. Those targets were often elderly women, people who couldn't fight back. One evening, she and her friend attacked an old lady near a supermarket. They didn't just steal her bag. They knocked her to the ground. Amanda still remembers her scream, and instead of guilt, she felt nothing. Amanda came from a family where crime wasn't an accident. It was tradition. Her own mother served time. For what? Attempted murder. "My mom tried to kill my dad," Amanda says flatly. "That's just how my family works." When Amanda landed in the Indiana women's prison, it felt like coming home to a darker version of her childhood, except this home had 1,800 women behind bars. "The hardest part," she says, "is realizing we're supposed to be the gentle sex. Society says we're not capable of murder." But prison crushes illusions fast. Her first week, she saw women who stabbed a man 40 times or poured boiling water on a cellmate. Whatever myths she believed about weak women vanished instantly. "I still can't wrap my head around it," she says. "How can a woman stab someone 40 times? It's beyond me." Women like Amanda end up here because of raw emotion, rage, panic, survival. They don't plan. They react. Their crimes are explosions, not strategies. They see themselves as more honest than people like Chloe, who scheme, manipulate, and then pretend to be victims. Amanda's story is the background noise in Chloe's world, the sound of anger that contrasts with cold calculation. Amanda got 6 years for robbery. Chloe got 110 for manipulation, but both lost their freedom. Both carry the same mark, inmate. Both wait for the day they can see their children again. Getting 110 years for a crime you didn't physically commit, that's a sentence meant to crush, but not Chloe. She served her time in Rockville Correctional Facility, a place where days blur into gray silence. But Chloe, the so-called female Manson, wasn't planning to die behind bars. Inside that quiet cell, she started to think, to plan, to scheme. She had one goal: escape. The plan needed time, patience, and a man with keys. Chloe's gift was manipulation. The same gift that got her convicted was now her only way out. She began scanning her surroundings, looking for a weak link. She found him. Officer Scott Anderson, mid-40s, 10 years on the job, divorced in all but name, tired, lonely, cracking under the weight of his own life. Chloe started the game slowly, like a chess master making the first move. Small talk, eye contact, empathy. "You officers are so strong," she'd say softly. "You do such hard work. No one at home really understands that, do they?" Scott, worn down by monotony and constant fights with his wife over bills, felt something he hadn't felt in years: appreciation. Chloe used that like a scalpel. Her first goal wasn't escape, it was smuggling. A letter that bypassed the mailroom, a pack of cigarettes, then money. She paid him for favors through outside contacts. "Just bring me this little package, Scott," she whispered. "No one will know. I trust you." Step by step, she tore down his defenses. A letter became a phone. A phone became an escape plan. The guard who once swore to uphold the law was now her courier. He felt guilty, but also alive, like someone finally saw him. The woman with the angelic face and the genius for control convinced him she was innocent. He believed her. He didn't realize he'd become her next pawn. When she finally mentioned the idea of escape, he was the one who said it out loud. "I'll get you out of here." She acted shocked, but inside, she smiled. The plan was working. Now, she just had to wait for the perfect day. Their relationship deepened. It wasn't romance. It was warfare. And Chloe was winning. The prison later called her the most skilled manipulator they'd ever seen. Scott Anderson was proof. She played every note in his emotional symphony: his loneliness, his pride, his guilt. He began sneaking in liquor, sitting with her for hours, listening to her fabricated stories about injustice. Until one cold March evening, he finally said it again. "I can't leave you here," he whispered. "I love you. I'll get you out." He promised her money, freedom, a new life. She pretended to hesitate. "But they'll catch us, Scott. It's suicide." "We'll disappear," he said. "I've got it all planned." The escape was set for the morning of May 23rd. Chloe stayed calm, ice cold. Every detail had to be perfect. One mistake, and it wouldn't just be failure, it would be decades in solitary confinement. In Rockville, supply vans moved in and out all the time. Laundry, food, maintenance. One of those vans would be their ticket out. At 6:30 in the morning, Officer Scott Anderson parked a white Ford Transit in the loading zone. His palms were sweating, but his face was steady. Chloe showed up under the pretext of helping with cleaning. He opened the back door. "Hurry," he hissed. She climbed inside, wrapping herself in laundry bags. The smell of bleach and damp fabric filled her lungs, the scent of freedom. The critical moment came at the gate. Scott drove up to the main checkpoint, where another officer, an old friend, waved him down. "Taking out more junk, Scott?" "Yeah, just some old stuff for disposal," he replied casually. He scanned his keycard. The steel gates groaned and slid open. Inside the van, Chloe held her breath. Then, movement. The van rolled forward, past the walls, onto Highway 63. Freedom. They drove several miles before stopping at an abandoned gas station on the outskirts of Terre Haute. "We did it!" Scott shouted, trembling between joy and panic. Chloe stepped out, the morning air hitting her face. It smelled of dust, gasoline, and victory. For a brief moment, she felt untouchable. The woman sentenced to 110 years had just walked away from hell, using nothing but charm and calculation. But she knew it wouldn't last. Freedom comes with a price. By the time the prison realized she was gone, 2 hours had passed. Her empty cell and Scott's absence told the whole story. For the Department of Corrections, it was humiliation of epic proportions. A guard, a sworn officer, had helped a convicted manipulator escape. The headlines exploded. "Double murderer escapes with prison guard lover," screamed the morning news. Chloe's photo, calm, pretty, unreadable, flooded every screen in America. They called her the most wanted woman in the country. The FBI and Indiana State Police launched a massive manhunt. They knew she couldn't go far without resources. For 4 months, Chloe and Scott lived like ghosts. Motel rooms paid for with cash or stolen cards, constant movement, changing states, avoiding cities, hiding from everyone and everything. But Chloe miscalculated one thing: Scott. He wasn't built for this life. The thrill faded. Paranoia grew. Money vanished. He got sloppy. They were caught in a cheap roadside motel in Ohio, 120 days after the escape. It ended at 2 a.m. Police traced Scott's credit card after he used it at a diner. SWAT surrounded the motel. When the door burst open, Scott didn't resist. He sat on the bed, shaking. And Chloe? She stood there, hands raised, eyes calm. No fear, no regret, just disappointment. She'd been so close. Her return to Rockville was a spectacle. Chains on her wrists, ankles, and waist. An armored van. Officers watching her like she was radioactive. She came back not as an inmate, but as a legend. The woman who made the system look stupid. But legends come at a price. "You thought you could outsmart us?" the warden growled. "You haven't seen real prison yet, Chloe. Now you will." They sent her to the place meant for the worst of the worst, the hole. Punishment for the escape was harsher than for the murders. The system doesn't forgive humiliation. In Rockville, they call it administrative segregation. Prisoners call it the hole. It's not just solitary confinement, it's sensory deprivation. A concrete box, no windows, only a slit of light near the ceiling. 20 hours a day locked in silence. 4 hours to shower or walk in a tiny yard that feels like a well. No phone calls, no visits, no group activities, no contact with anyone but guards. 5 years, alone. The silence, Chloe later said, is the scariest part. At first it's peaceful, then your thoughts start shouting. Staff labeled her again, master manipulator. They said she was 10 times more dangerous than any woman with a knife. She doesn't break furniture, one officer said. She breaks people. She found the weakness of a man who'd worked here 15 years. She'll find another if you let her. Her only link to reality was the faint voice through the wall. Amanda. The same Amanda who once robbed old women now spoke to Chloe through vents and pipes. They whispered about food, dreams, weather, never crimes. She doesn't know who I really am, Chloe said, and that's better. For now, Chloe waits for the 5 years of isolation to end. Then she'll return to the general population, then back to waiting for the rest of her 110 years. Her biggest discovery? You can control everything except time. Time doesn't move here, it crawls. It forces her to relive every choice. The day she bought the shotgun, the night she stayed silent, the moment the prison gates shut behind her forever. While Chloe counts the endless hours in her concrete box, others in Rockville face a different kind of sentence: freedom. Freedom sounds beautiful until you realize how terrifying it is for someone who's forgotten how to live outside. Meet Martha. She's about 50. She spent 20 years behind bars, an entire lifetime. When she was locked up, there were no smartphones, no social media, not even iPods. The world she knew doesn't exist anymore. I'm scared, Martha admits. I don't know how to live out there. I don't know how to get a job. I don't know how to talk to people who haven't been in prison. Her fear isn't about money. It's about shock, the psychological kind. She's terrified the world will be too loud, too fast, too strange. Terrified she'll fall back into old habits and end up right where she started. She holds old, faded photos of her kids, grown now, strangers in the outside world, and prays they'll forgive her. And then there's Amanda, Chloe's neighbor in the hole, whose time is almost up. 6 years for robbery, and now she's nearly free. But unlike Martha, Amanda isn't paralyzed by fear. She's fueled by resolve. Her mother was an inmate. She became one too. Now she has 2 daughters. I won't let them see prison as home, Amanda says, her voice shaking for the first time. I have to end this. My girls can't repeat my life. If I fail, they're doomed. For Amanda, freedom is a fight against her own nature. She's spent years learning to control her anger, but prison doesn't teach you how to live, only how to survive. She's walking out with a criminal record and a fragile hope that love for her daughters will be stronger than the rage that built her world. And finally, there's Chloe. Unlike Martha and Amanda, she isn't waiting for release. Her story isn't about redemption. It's a warning. A reminder that intelligence, when mixed with manipulation, can destroy lives faster than violence ever could. Chloe sits in her cell, staring at the wall, speaking softly through the vent. I know what people see when they look at me, she says. They see a liar, a manipulator. And maybe they're right. Every time someone finds out who I am, it's another wall between us. 2 murders, 1 escape, 110 years. Her sentence isn't just punishment. It's society's way of locking up a dangerous mind. For her, the light at the end of the tunnel isn't freedom. It's just another human face she might someday talk to, without bars between them. Chloe's story, the girl who didn't pull the trigger but still lost her life, shows one truth. Manipulation can be more destructive than violence itself. They didn't punish her for holding the gun. They punished her for holding the strings. And when she pulled them, people died, hearts broke, and the system learned how far one woman's control could reach. But beyond Chloe's legend, there's something else, a pattern. Women like Martha, who cling to hope. Women like Amanda, who fight for their daughters. And women like Chloe, who prove that power without empathy always turns to poison. In the end, Rockville isn't just a prison, it's a mirror, and every story inside it reflects a different face of human weakness, rage, fear, love, and control. Was the 110-year sentence fair? She didn't pull the trigger, but she bought the weapon and helped hide the bodies. Can someone like Chloe, brilliant but broken, ever be rehabilitated? And what's worse, decades among others, or 5 years alone with nothing but your own mind? Subscribe for more true stories from behind bars, where reality is stranger than fiction, and every locked door hides another human story.